So we all know that the anniversary servers will be going to TBC next year, and of course I intend to play it for the first time. And one of the things that I am most excited for is of course Arena. And while I'm told my beloved warrior class really isn't all that good in PvE, and well, we all know how warrior is in PvP, so naturally I feel the need to go with another class, and I'm pretty certain that I want to take my Druid, who I just got to level 60 with, which by the way has its own dedicated hour-and-a-half long video and full playlist, so feel free to watch it after this video. So with that decision in mind, I of course have some stuff to do beforehand, such as actually learning how to play the class, but also gear. And what better place to get gear than in raids? And luckily for me, my guild hosts Blackwing Lair and Molten Core every single week for socials and pugs, which I will be participating in, because I am not allowed anywhere near the guild's core raiding group, which honestly makes sense. Starting the day off, we were in UBRS waiting for our run to start, because we desperately need one specific piece of gear, the True Strike shoulders. Now for us, this is actually BIS all of the way until Nax. However, knowing my luck, this will probably last me until TBC. So that's the first thing I will add to my list, and that is to get some gear. We get to the first boss, which is actually the boss that can drop my shoulders. We click on this stone to awaken the boss, and then have to AoE down all of these little ads that spawn. Then stand around and wait for the boss to activate. And I think most players just pop cooldowns at this point because he usually gets dropped very quickly. And sadly, no shoulders, which is fine because it's only the first run. So we clear our way into the next room, and we actually stop to do this boss, which I believe came out with the most recent patch. Basically, you click on a crystal thing and a few waves of dragons come out to attack you. Then a slightly larger dragon comes out and you kill him and you get a small assortment of caster loot. And he dropped the crystallized girdle, and I'm not sure if that's the chase item or not. The next boss would usually be a rare mob called Jed Rune Watcher, but I believe we skipped over that one. The next boss is Rend Blackhand. Now a few months ago, most people that were doing this dungeon were only going up to this boss, since it was the fastest way to farm out loot, and these were called Rend runs. But recently, not a lot of people are doing that, so if I was going to farm out my shoulders, that meant I was going to have to do full UBRS runs, which most of the time would take an hour to complete. Now Rend drops a lot of nice loot, his swords, his braces, and this dragon scale thingy, none of which dropped this time. The next boss is called the Beast, and I love this boss, easily one of my favorites out of any dungeon. I'm not sure what it is, but I think it's just the sheer size of this boss that makes it feel cool. He also drops a couple of nice items though, primarily the Pip Skinner, which is a necessary item if players want to skin the likes of Onyxia. And holy crap, I just noticed whilst looking at the loot that there's a Ferocious Bite 5. The next boss is also one that just got added, Lord Valthalak, and he is genuinely a tough boss. I'm still not entirely sure what it is that he does, but I'm pretty sure he spawns ads that you must kill immediately. And aside from that, he just does a crap ton of damage. But he can also drop the Pendant of Celerity, another one of the best pieces of gear for us. And we actually did end up wiping on the first attempt, but we respawned and tried again, and we were able to squeeze by. No neck though. And the final boss is General Dracasath, another boss that is quite tough, needing multiple tanks in order to kill him cleanly. Someone, preferably a hunter, will kite Dracasath into the next room whilst the rest of the group quickly takes down the ads. Simple enough. Then they bring Dracasath back into the room and we just have to kill him normally. And the reason it needs multiple tanks is because sometimes he does this thing where he will stun the tank for a solid 10 seconds, which obviously leaves the boss free to kill whoever he wants. And he's also kind of the same as Valthalak, where he does just do a crap ton of damage. But in the end, we take him down. Now of course, the shoulders are just that good for us, so I hopped back in for another run. And it was just a perfectly normal run. We cleared the room and progressed into the boss's room, and then he spawns and we DPS him down as quick as possible. And once again, no shoulders. And that's okay, because we went and did yet another run. And again, we clear the rooms, make it into the boss's room, AoE down all of the ads, and then wait for him to spawn. We DPS him down quickly, and again, no shoulders. So I decided to take a little break from UBRS and go get a different piece of gear. Now, if you're a druid, you know exactly where I'm going with this, because we need to farm out my weapon. Now, outside of raids, we use something like the Unstoppable Force, or if we get lucky in BWL, then maybe the Draconic Maul. However, inside of raids, our best weapon is actually the Manual Crowd Pummeler, an item obtained from Nomergon, a level 30 dungeon. And the way we get it is by entering through the Nomergon workshop entrance and then stealth through all of the mobs until we get to the Crowd Pummeler 960. Now he has a 33% chance to drop the Crowd Pummeler and a 66% chance to drop the Gnome Bot Operating Boots. And that's pretty decent odds, to be honest. But the thing about the Crowd Pummeler is that it only has 3 charges. 3 charges that once used will never replenish. So I need to farm out like 50 of these. And to do 5 runs of this takes about 15 minutes and then we get locked out. So I would leave my druid at the entrance of the dungeon whilst I went off and recorded another video. And I would return every hour or so to do another 5 runs. And in the end, we were able to farm out quite a decent amount, enough to last a few weeks anyway. So the next thing to add to the list is get world buffs. So I headed into Dire Maul in order to get my DMT buffs, which is 3 little world buffs, granting 15% stamina, 200 attack power, and 3% spell crit. And the way we get this is by entering into Dire Maul North and running all the way to the very end of the dungeon and speak to the little ogre that's standing there. Then we run all the way back and speak to 3 separate NPCs, each granting us one of the buffs. Then we can boot up the buffs and Hearthstone out again. Very simple process for 3 very efficient buffs. Afterwards, I once again return to the UBRS dungeon for another go at getting my shoulders. We clear the room, click the stone, wait for the boss, DPS him down, and then no shoulders. That's okay because we went for another, doing the exact same as before, then DPSing down the boss, and again no shoulders. And then another run, we DPS the boss, and nothing. And at this point, I knew we were close. The next run will surely be the run. I was wrong. So I decided to take another break from UBRS for a while to go and work on another world buff. And thanks to my friend Lynn Farrow, who is another Feral Druid player, we were able to get the War Chief's Blessing buff. Now this is a weird buff, since it's technically horde only, but if you get mind controlled and the buff drops whilst you're mind controlled, then you will receive the buff because it technically turns you into horde. And we don't need a priest because there is an engineering item called the Gnomish Mind Control Cap, which is exactly what it sounds like. It allows non-priests to mind control other players, but the drawback is that it can backfire. So after like an hour of waiting, the buff timer finally appears, Lynn uses the cap on me, and it doesn't backfire, which means I get the buff. And as I'm teleporting away, this angry warlock almost got me. So now that we are one step closer to being raid ready, I return to UBRS once again for another couple of runs. First run, we get no shoulders. The second run, we get no shoulders. The third run, we also get no shoulders. And I'm pretty sure I did a couple more here but forgot to record them. Not that it matters because I didn't get my shoulders anyway. Now this week is actually the week that the Dark Moon Fair is up, and it's up in Mulgore. Now with the Dark Moon Fair comes an array of buffs, and what we want is Sage's Dark Fortune of Damage, which gives a 10% increase to all damage for 2 hours. Now that is a very powerful buff, but since it's in Mulgore, the place is absolutely swarming with horde. So what we need to do is stealth up to the NPC and take the buff. Now that's the easy part, but we also need to get away safely. And I've heard of people using Petri flasks, vanishing away, etc, etc. But the best way to do it is to get someone to queue you for a battleground. And when the queue pops, you stealth up and take the buff, then accept the queue to immediately get teleported away to the battleground. It's kind of genius, to be honest with you. Now the next thing I'm going to add to the list is get attuned. Now I'm already attuned for Blackwing Lair and Molten Core because I did that myself off camera, but I do still need to get attuned for Onyxia. Now, I don't think my guild does Onyxia runs anymore, but just in case, it's probably best that I do it anyway, because the second best neck for me is from Onyxia, and that's obviously the Onyxia Tooth Pendant. Now, I did already do the first parts whilst leveling, and currently we were on the quest where we need to venture into Blackrock Depths and kill Anger and Golem for the information items. So I got into a group with a few levelers, and I pull Anger and bring him back to the wall and we DPS him down. Now, surprisingly, no quest item, and I just thought it was bugged. No big deal, I can come back again pretty easily. So we clear forward into Golem's room. We of course take down the big Golem ads that are with the boss before he comes running back into the room. We kill him, and once again, no quest item. That was quite annoying. I mean, that's a huge waste of half an hour, and I wouldn't realise until later that I had already done the quest. The items were just in my bank. Idiot. So before I continued with getting attuned, I quickly made a stop at the auction house to purchase the consumables that I would need, and then made my way back into Blackrock Depths to do the jailbreak part of the attunement. Now, this is a pretty simple and pretty boring part of the attunement. We first basically clear everything around the main area of the dungeon, then we go back to Marshal Windsor in his jail cell and we can start the escort. And it really is about as boring as it gets. He walks around at the speed of a snail and a few waves of mobs will pop out of the abyss to attack us. And that goes on for like 15 to 20 minutes until we had managed to do one massive loop around the entire dungeon. Now, the next quest is also extremely boring. We meet with Marshal Windsor at the gates of Stormwind and then RP walk for 10 minutes until we get to the Stormwind Keep. And that's when Onyxia pops out and a load of ads spawn. Now, if you die to the ads, then you have to restart the entire portion of the quest. So instead of killing them, you just sit and watch the Stormwind guards get obliterated until they are all dead. Fantastic. And then the next part, we have to go all the way over to Winterspring. But unfortunately, that would have to wait because the raid was actually going to start in 20 minutes, so I would have to start making my way over there. So I started making my way up to Blackwing Lair, and this place was in chaos. There was like 2 horde raids, and then there was an alliance raid, and it was just mental. But somehow, I managed to stealth in between the entire horde raid and enter Blackwing Lair unharmed. Also, thank you to Cursed Cookie, who stood for like 5 minutes enchanting all of my weapons for me. But eventually, everyone gets here and we start to buff up and begin the fight. And I'll be totally honest, I still don't know how this fight works. But I know that it has something to do with mind controlling the boss, and then you have to take the boss around the room and make him destroy his own eggs. Kinda sadistic in a way. And that's basically it. We stand around for 10 minutes, killing small ads that spawn, and eventually, once all of the eggs are destroyed, the boss breaks the mind control and we obliterate him. Well, they do. I am at the bottom of the DPS meter. The next boss is Velestraz the Corrupt, and again, I don't really know how this fight works, but he is a fun fight because I think you get like a buff or something during this fight, which basically gives you infinite energy. It's also worth noting that I'm not actually a DPS tonight, but in fact, I'm tanking. But I'm not main tank. No, I don't think I'll ever get that privilege, especially after this performance. But I'm also not off tank or third tank. I'm fourth tank. What an honor. But really, I only need to tank a few packs in each raid, so how bad could it be? So we kill Vale and make it up to this ramp, where the first part I need to tank comes in, and I have to tank green. So I charge in and immediately lose aggro. I also had to tank the next pack as well, which went a lot better considering I actually had the mob on me this time. We then make it into the next room, and I believe what we need to do is get the rogues to stealth into the traps and disarm them whilst we sneak around the outside of the room and DPS down some ads. Really not too bad. And we do that until we get to the next boss, Broodlord Lashlair. What does he do? I have no idea. But one thing I don't think I've mentioned yet is that we get 2 soft reserves. My first one, I went with Prester's Talisman of Connivery, the absolute best neck piece I could possibly get right now. 30 agility and 1 hit, it doesn't really get much better than that. My second soft reserve, I went for the Circle of Applied Force. 12 strength and 22 agility, it speaks for itself. The stats are just insane on this ring. Now the next boss is Firemaw. Now I do somewhat understand this boss. He puts a stacking debuff onto players, and when it gets too high, you hide behind the wall and wait for it to drop off. Pretty simple. And that's when the next trash pack comes along, where once again I'm tanking an ad. But I struggled to target the ad I'm supposed to be tanking, and well, went too far forward and died to the techies. Well, let's just hope I'm not banned from tanking in the future. Now the next boss is Ebonrock. Again, don't really know what I'm supposed to do, but the tanks take him into the corner and they are swapping him back and forth, so they're definitely doing something, I just don't know what. The next boss is Flamegore, who I think is identical to Ebonrock, but Flamegore can also drop the Circle of Applied Force, but unfortunately, he did not. The next boss is Chromagus, and he's quite a fun one. He applies players with a debuff, which you can dispel by eating sand, and he also has a simple LOS mechanic. Perfectly standard boss. And lastly is of course Big Boy Nefarian. Again, not a massively complicated boss. He fears and he spawns ads, but the ads aren't really a problem because, you know, mages exist. But Nefarian can also drop the neck piece I want, and we take him down, and sadly, no neck. So we all head into Molten Core. Now I'm not going to go into massive detail about Molten Core because everyone in this group is so massively geared apart from me, so we're cutting through every mob like it's nothing. We take down Lucifron and start to take down Magmador. Now in this raid I also get 2 soft reserves. However, I used them both on one single item, and that is the Band of Akuria. 16 agility plus 2% hit. This thing is insane for me because I actually need a whole 9% hit in order to be hit capped. Also, whilst we are doing Molten Core, we began rolling out the Blackwing Lair loot, and I did roll on this taut Dragonhide belt. It's really not great for cat, but I could definitely use it for tanking. And since I was the only person rolling, my pathetic 11 roll wins the loot. The other thing that I rolled on was a Draconic Maul, one of the best weapons for me outside of raids, and at the time I didn't even notice it drop, so it was nice to see it appear in the loot rolls. And well, I rolled a 90, which is my first time winning some actually useful loot. Even on my warrior, the only thing I was ever able to win was my Onyxia Tooth Pendant, and that was because I was the only person rolling on the head, so I can't really count that. So we continue to make our way through the entire raid, killing Gar, Baron Geddon, Shazra, Sulfuron Harbinger, and Golemag, until we get to Major Dormo Executus. Apparently, I was meant to be tanking something here, so I target my green mob, but it gets sheeped, so apparently not the one. And at that point, I just switched into cat form and tried my best to blend in. But we got it down, and then we can move on to the final boss, Ragnaros, the boss that can drop my Band of Akuria. And normally, I just stand with everyone else and DPS down the boss. But that's when the raid leader yells, "No, cat, not there." But you know, I don't know where to go. So I just stood there anyway, and in the end, everything was completely fine. But no Band of Akuria. And sadly, there's really not much else in Molten Core that I really care about. I hope you all enjoyed today's video because I enjoyed making it. I always do. Again, big thanks to my friend Lynn Farrell for helping me get my rend buff. I will put his YouTube in the description if you want to check him out. The other thing is, let me know in the comments what you think about these raiding videos. It is definitely a lot harder to create a kind of progressive story style of video, but let me know if you guys have any ideas or things to add to these endgame videos, because as much as I love creating new characters and experiencing the game from all these different kinds of ways, it would still be really nice to create endgame content videos as well. The last thing is, we do have a new character series coming, and it will be the complete opposite of everything I had done in World of Warcraft so far. Anyway, I think that's enough yapping for today. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you all later.